Hello, I'm Dave Feinlieb, and this is Beyond the Shelf. This show is an open exploration of the people and process behind e-commerce. Through conversations with innovators in the space, we learn the stories of these leaders and their strategies for e-commerce success. You can join our mailing list and learn more about how we're helping leading brands and retailers build content at scale at itsrapid.ai. My guest on today's show is Carter Jensen, Senior Manager of Global Digital Strategy at General Mills. Carter has three areas of focus: leading the acceleration of AI, heading up consumer-first digital strategy, and an international focus on digital learning and development. Before joining General Mills, Carter was Director of Strategy for e-commerce at Latitude, a leading advertising agency based in Minneapolis. He was co-host of the well-known Omni Talk podcast, ran his own consulting firm, and worked in strategy at Periscope and in business development at Apple. We discuss Carter's background in both agency and brand leadership roles, his time running his own consulting business, and his current role at General Mills. Please enjoy my conversation with Carter Jensen. Carter, great to see you again.
Yeah, you too, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Would you take us back? How'd you get your start in the space?
Oh, yeah. I probably started working way too young, but that's okay. That's kind of my personality a little bit. I joined the agency world actually when, just in the middle of college. I was at the University of Minnesota and joined a local agency here and started doing event marketing work, as odd as that sounds, for Target. And I bring us all the way back to that because truly that's where I started discovering kind of my fascination with the retail, right? And understanding what else was the agency doing for Target and how else did that work and how did our work impact that? And I started getting really just curious about that and was thankful enough to kind of join into the agency land. And of course, being here in Minneapolis, Target's in our backyard, but also a bunch of other retail clients are in our backyard as well. And so, during my tenure at agency, I really focused on this kind of intersection of digital and retail. And it took kind of a couple different, lenses in terms of sometimes it was in-store experiences, but ultimately, at the end of the day, e-commerce really kind of came into focus. E-commerce specifically heavily in kind of digital marketing into e-commerce, and spent 10 years in on and off in agency land doing that.
And seems like a blink of an eye, right? And
yeah,
here we are.
Agency land, right? In agency land, to anyone who's done that, I kind of say it's boot camp, right? It's the good and the bad. There's a mix of really incredible experiences, and there's a mix of things that you hope to never have to do again. But it was great, and I fluxed between agency and then doing a couple of the my own things, as you had mentioned. And then in June of 2020, I got really so lucky to join General Mills within our global e-com team and focused on that, and that leads me to my role here today.
Tell us a little about some of the great experiences. What are some of the highlights from that time?
A couple things. So I'll tell some kind of intangible and then tangible. Intangibly, in your 20s, the rush of, finishing a presentation in a taxi cab or the crunch of getting something done the night before, I think is exhilarating at times, especially when, you don't have a family and you're just learning, and having the opportunity to be a part of that, I think is something that's a really valuable experience. And I think it still sets me up, for success today. Tangibly, I think the other thing that was really helpful is you get to see a lot of different brands, but also a lot of different brands from a lot of different sides, right? So sometimes we, as agency partners, we came in directly from a creative perspective, right? And we weren't so close to the, kind of traditional marketing engine, or let's say some of the e-com or digital properties. Other times we come square in on an Amazon piece of business, right? For some of these big retailers or some of these big brands, and just a complete 360 exposure. So those are really two things that stick out to me as really interesting opportunities that I am thankful for.
But maybe not so many all-nighters and last minute slide decks now.
Yes, someone said, I think when I just first started, there's something magical about being closer to the basket, right? Closer to the consumer's basket, or however you want to kind of take that analogy, right? And they are 100% right. It's exhausting to do all that work in agency land, and yeah, you win one of 10 kind of pitches. The amount of work that we get to do that we actually see go into the world today is just something that you don't get in agency world, and that is a big difference.
Yeah, big impact. Now you had a period in there where you're running your own business. You're the entrepreneur, and tell us about that. How was that, and how do you bring some of that with you to your current role at Mills?
One of the things that I started to do is started consulting on just kind of bare bones digital marketing, specifically within Meta's ad platforms. So I think Facebook, Instagram, and then also a couple others. And what I realized is, these small to mid-sized companies have a really hard time finding either a full-time employee or an agency partner. And there's various reasons why each side is hard. And ultimately, what they needed is a part-time consultant that was able to come in and help them navigate, help them spend some of their ad dollars, help them just understand how to do some test and experiments. And I found a really interesting niche in that, right? I think the other thing that was really good about running your own thing is oftentimes you're doing stuff that you didn't know how to do, right? So there was a lot of, YouTubing late at night to say, how do you think you'd optimize this, or why am I not seeing the rates that I should, or how should I recommend this? And this was before the days that you could just type in a question to ChatGPT and get all your answers back. But YouTube was still a good learning source for me. So that was my time there.
I wanted to highlight that earlier this year you were named to the Path to Purchase Institute 40 under 40 class of 2023. First off, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Really appreciate that, Dave.
And you're obviously doing some really pioneering work in the space. Would love to hear some of the things that you're working on.
Yeah, for sure. So, now at General Mills, just over 3.5 years, I work within what we call our brand experience team, also known as marketing. So, report up to our chief marketing officer. And I believe I have one of the best jobs in the building. It does not, the day does not go by where I'm not thankful for that. But I'm in charge of new and emerging capabilities for our marketing team. I'm in charge of ensuring that we have the sharpest tools that are possible and that we are arming our teams appropriately with those tools. And a lot of that is kind of what I talk about is this push pull, right? So sometimes our marketers come to us with a challenge and say, we're having a really hard time doing X, Y, and Z, right? Why is that? What's a solution that we can bring to the table? Um, Other times it's more of a pull where we're saying, hey, technology is rapidly changing. So what we're doing here today could be a lot better. We could do it a lot different. How do we introduce those new tools or new solutions? And for anyone who's worked in a large corporation, the challenge there is vast, right? And it's not just finding new tools; it's figuring out how do you integrate it? How do you get past the security and legal restrictions that are there for a very good reason? And I believe we've done a really good job as my team finding a great balance between all of that. Is really thinking different about the ways we're able to bring tools in, but also understanding that we represent some of the world's biggest brands, and there's a responsibility behind that to be a little more careful on just introducing something new for the sake of it. And so I think there's a balance that we've been really good at holding.
Sounds like a very exciting and also like a fun role where you could learn a lot day to day and really pick up some.
And you can eat a different flavor of cereal every day as well. We have our
Now I understand you've got. Tell me about this. You make the recipes in the building.
yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, so
Tell me about that, or is that just something I've heard?
no, this is super interesting. So, if you're ever in Minneapolis, let us know. Right, we can make this happen. But we have the Betty Crocker kitchens are a real thing, right? So if you're ever in our building, it's just beautiful floor to ceiling windows. You can look out over kind of this vast amount of kitchens. And what I thought was so interesting is, if you've never been to BettyCrocker.com to look up your favorite recipe or what to cook tonight, definitely try it. But what's really interesting is that many of the recipes that we put on that site have been tested and validated through those kitchens, right? So we have our teams down there who are not only proving that the recipes work, they're finding the tips and the tricks to make it extra perfect for you and your family. But I think it's really interesting is, let's say air fryers, for example, they're testing air fryers. They're testing pizza rolls in air fryers. Are we getting the temperature right? What's the time? How do you get them perfectly crispy? And yeah, we're not able to do every air fryer out there. But the way that our recipes and our products are tested in this building is fascinating. Actually, today I accidentally went up on third floor and it smelled really good. There's no shortage of cookies around usually, so it's a little bit of a problem.
I love it. I love it. So even so what you're saying is even I might have a chance at making one of these recipes work because they've been tested out.
They've been tested, yes, and you can, look to your skill level and know that, your family is going to be fed well with whatever you choose from BettyCrocker.com tonight.
See what's gonna work. Well, I'll definitely have to stop by and sample the product and tell us more. You've got three areas now at Mills that you're working on. AI is obviously huge, very topical at the moment, but share a little bit about at least the AI area to start.
Yeah, totally. Well, we can dive kind of headfirst into that. And as you mentioned, there's kind of three categories, but obviously the AI one is really top of mind for so many people. And I think one of the things that I quickly learned, though we might not be fully embodying it throughout all of our teams here, is that we have to think of AI as an accelerant for existing capabilities, right? That's not to say that AI is going to unlock capabilities we didn't even imagine, right? Or that we were able to do things that we didn't even knew existed 6 months ago. But what we're really seeing is an acceleration of our existing tools and capabilities like today, right? So as you know, ChatGPT, a very public figure. Obviously, we're not using the ChatGPT interface natively, but we've been working with a lot of different tools that just help us do bare bones things better. Think about writing PDP pages. Think about those types of things. It's not a new concept to optimize a website. How it's done, can we do it better? Can we do it faster? And that's truly what we're seeing. Is we're seeing this really interesting layer of accelerant, right, put on really all of the different capabilities we have. Now, yes, of course, we are thinking about the ways that this potentially could change our business, right? Or how do we create completely new experiences for our users? But at the end of the day, the closest in things that are going to really take hold within, I think, any big company is how do you really take advantage of the accelerant that's now been kind of integrated within the tools and tech that you've used all the time, right? And I think that's been really interesting. So yes, we often get noted like, oh, that's the team that's doing AI. Like, no, actually, we're still doing our same job. We're a lot busier maybe than we were 6 months ago, but the fundamentals are the same.
This idea of bringing in new technologies, obviously AI is the one. It's huge, it's very visible right now, but at a company the scale of Mills, where you're global in nature, you're bringing in new technologies all the time. How do you go about that? How do you look at them? How do you get people excited? How do they get into the workflow?
I mean, I'll go back to this push pull concept, right? So we have identified and we will continue to identify, and this is the same process, ironically, we used a year ago. There's areas of, priority, like any organization, right? We have things that, are bottlenecks maybe in processes or things that have really slowed us down or things that are preventing us from doing a larger mission within the marketing organization that we know we need to fix, right? And so those are our top priorities to figure out, can new technology, and let's just keep focusing on it because it's such a big thing, can AI help us fix that? And what's really cool is usually it can. That's what's mind blowing about this new technology is that, there's a great newsletter. It's like, there's an AI for that. Like ultimately, yeah, we can often find a really interesting technology that could potentially fix it, right? Now, to your point, Dave, just because the technology is out there doesn't mean it's right for us, right? We are very careful on who we engage with, and we want to make sure that we're doing it appropriately as we put things into the building, as we bring things into our team. We have to be really rigorous on just picking up the most recent piece of tech. And that's for a variety of reasons, right? Everything from brand safety to legal to just how our teams work and operate. The 10,000 people here at headquarters have a very real reason and a real way to work. And to think that, we can just say, oh, there's this new thing, like it's not that easy, right? And it's not that easy for very good reasons. And so that's why, yeah, we have that priority list. We'll go out and find kind of stopgaps for it, but we have a very rigorous process to introduce it.
Now, I've had the good fortune at my previous company, Content Analytics, and it's rapid to work with brands like yourself and
Yeah.
big brands, PepsiCo, all these large retailers. What's your advice for entrepreneurs? You want to go meet the big brand, and I have a few lessons from the road in my mind, but I would love to kind of hear your take on it.
I think the most interesting thing is that we have done some of the best deals with some of the smallest companies, right? So I would never worry about trying to be big or different. With that, you do have to have a plan for how you're going to scale and play at the level of a big brand, right? I think this notion of like faking how big you are, it's not accurate. I think it's this idea of, yeah, you can admit that you're four people strong, right? And you're two people in, and you just hired two new. That's amazing. That's really great. And but just be incredibly clear on how you would picture scaling with the organization, how you would picture your solution scaling. I also think it's really important. At the end of the day, it's just me, right? You're talking to me. You're not. Uh, and yeah, I have a unique experience, but everyone's got their own experience. And tell me how you're going to help me integrate it. Understand, like we do have legal problems. We do have security hurdles we need to get through. How have you thought about that? How have you helped me get through that? And we have a lot of teams who'll just say, yeah, like we've gone through corporate security or cybersecurity many a times. Here's our process, and we are available to help whenever needed, right? And helping us identify that, I think, is really key. And then also, like, no one knows the intricacies of our business like we do, right? And we know that, but let's not pretend that you do, right? Like, how do we connect and understand what are the core problems, and then figure out, hey, maybe we're only going to use 20 or 30% of your product, but it's actually going to fit perfectly within the need set that we have. So I think there's three really good ways that you can really kind of match. And again, it doesn't matter if you're a two-person company or 2,000. I think we're open to it all.
By the way, that middle one, that was the one I was gonna lead with, which was it's the brand, it's the big company, but there's a person
Totally.
with a real business problem, and if you can connect on that and do something useful, then there's something to be done there.
Well, Dave, I'm sure you've seen the opposite as well, right? Like, of bare blank kind of boilerplate slides that don't really approach anything next to.
It's exhausting. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. We've all
exactly.
been there.
Yeah, well, so great. So you've got AI now. What's of the moment? What are some of the leading or the bleeding edges of what you're doing with AI? If you can share some of that.
Totally. Well, I'm not going to share brand specifics, but I'll tell you that we are continuing to push kind of the evolution of technology in terms of AI. Which, like I mentioned, we're a little busier than we normally are. Because if anyone has followed the market, there are new things coming out every single day, right? So, like a great example of this is we really believed, a couple months back that like image generation or automated image generation was going to be a ways out. Especially when we start looking at, with especially brand logos and those types of things, it's a really big challenge. It's funny, I was talking to our agency partners yesterday, and kind of our lead CTO there was like, I had this bet that we wouldn't really see this for 18 months, but after seeing announcements from this morning, I'm not making any bets anymore, right? And so I think our teams and just the market in general is blown away with just how rapidly this is evolving. So when you talk about bleeding edge, you talk about like image and video automation, and really like text is really coming to fruition in an incredible way. But the idea that we can create some incredible images, and yeah, they might not be our core assets. Yeah, they might not be anything compared to like what we can maybe shoot today. We are finding really interesting ways to test and invest in learning more about that. And it's not just reading the newsletters, it's not just going to conferences, but saying,
Yeah, yeah.
hey, let's like try something and see if we can break it. Or let's try something and even better, see if we can actually get it to work. And how close can we get, right? Knowing full well we're not going to maybe launch any of this anytime soon. Maybe it's for an internal pilot or whatever, but like let's bring it in and try it. And we are blown away, I feel like, every day by how close we're getting.
It is amazing what you can do now with these models. So really, really exciting. So AI, we've got that. We talked about how do you bring tech in. Now you've got some other really interesting areas that you're working on as well, consumer first as well as some global. So would love to hear about those.
One of the other things I'm really passionate about is, as silly as it sounds, these consumer journeys, right? And I think one of the interesting things that is going to be no surprise to any of your audience is just how digital first our consumers are today, and how our kind of strategy of any big company works to match that, right? And so it comes down to even some of the more basic things of, are we really prioritizing channels that our core audience is prioritizing? As we look to our investment, let's say in traditional websites, how do we maybe take some of that investment and create similar or better brand experiences on platforms that our consumers are actually living on? And that's relatively new, not necessarily new for us, but understanding what that new ecosystem looks like is something that we're working on actively.
And those new platforms might be social or video platforms or all the stuff we're all using day to day.
Totally. And our brands have been doing that forever, but I think the magic comes and what we're trying to figure out is like how do they all work together to create a really interesting ecosystem and what are the methods that we're doing to map that and to make sure our investments are going into the right place. And making sure that, really we coined this term connected commerce a couple of years ago. But at the core of that, it's not saying you got a really great Facebook page or you're really crushing it on Snapchat or you got a really good TikTok presence or your .com is amazing. It's to say, hey, most of your users are on Snapchat, right? Great. How are you showing up there, and how are you converting them to purchase without them having to jump through hoops? And I get it's a super basic concept, but what we're trying to do is figure out how do you operationalize some of that strategy, right? And how do you figure out this new kind of brand ecosystem that matches this new consumer demand, and then how is it dynamic? Because as we all know, like next year is going to be different, right? It's going to be different. We know core platforms are going to stay the same, but like how do we not, jump at every new opportunity, but strategically invest in new platforms and ensure that like the path to purchase is the best for that consumer and stay on top of that trend. And it's a huge challenge, and we're working on it, right? I can't say we have this beautiful tool that we're using that's going to figure it out, but how do we empower our brands, our marketers to build those experiences with the tools and tech that we have and are building today?
I believe we are using connected commerce, by the way, in some of our marketing materials. So I think that term has, you've done a nice job there.
I think for a while we were trying to coin it as our own or whatever.
I figured.
I think we'll go down and we'll debate who thought of it first back in early 2020. So
Yeah. But the validation is you see it everywhere now. So it's amazing.
100%.
You'll
Yeah,
still embrace it.
we'll still
Now,
embrace it.
one other area is global, and you're working across many different markets. You've got localization, you've got different SKUs, content, things that are going on to individual teams. How do you think about that as it relates to content, which is something we focus on, obviously, and some of these other initiatives?
Yeah, so there's the obvious, right? You talked about, the markets, the different languages, different products, different SKUs, different retailers. I mean, it's a whole different world, literally, right? But I think what oftentimes people in our position miss is the resource differences, right? So a lot of our business comes through North America. No, that's now is no secret to anyone, right? But that doesn't mean that the international teams don't have the same problem, but it does mean that they have different resources at their fingertips, right? So you might have a team of 15 people here who are running a brand or running something, right, that they might be running with. Over there, it might be one person's job, right? We might have a budget of X here. Well, they have a budget of 1/10 of X there, but they still have the same problem. And I think what a lot of times happens within any big corporation when we have that disparate is a central team like myself will come over and say, well, here's what we did in North America. Why doesn't it work for you? Right. They're like, what? And that's a really frustrating thing, I think, for international teams, especially when we're trying to build new capabilities to solve problems that they identify as being very real and are very real to our business. And so, like, what our team has really tried to do is to say, we have the same problem. We have a lot of learnings already, maybe from North America, but like we're going to need to completely rethink a solution for our international teams. They have different, again, the obvious different retailers, different brands, different products, but also different levels of investment and different levels of support. And I think we've done a really interesting job standing up, our tech stacks over there, our emerging capabilities practice over there, where it's just very different.
We've also got Omni, another of the moment, but a very broad term. How are you thinking about that as it pertains to the shopper experience and some of these experiments that you're running?
I won't deny that. Yeah, my heart is in BX and in marketing. That's where I lie. But I think my best friends are in our kind of our customer team, as we call them, representing some of our biggest customers, such as Walmart, Target, Amazon, Kroger, et cetera, et cetera. And I think one of the things I love is I started in e-commerce, right? So those teams have been really close. And like anyone, we're doing our best to cross categories and make sure our consumers have the best experience across all of it. So we are very involved in all of the new and emerging practices that we're seeing from our customer teams. And actually, there's a counterpart to myself who sits on the customer side, and we hold hands all the time, right? We constantly look back and forth to figure out how we can put this stuff together. I think the opportunity we have is like as consumers emerge and as kind of different retailers also bring new capabilities to the table. How do we, as trusted partners with our customers who we've been trusted partners with for 100 plus years, how do we take advantage of some of the great stuff that they're doing as well? So a great example is like, the pandemic, we always talk about the different ways people shop, whether it's online or whatever. no one innovated more arguably than some of our retail partners. Think of the emergence of curbside, think of the emergence and acquisitions within, instant delivery. We want to partner with them on that. We want to figure out that, at the end of the day, that makes our consumers experience better. That makes a great connected commerce experience. And so how do we show up great on target.com? How do we show up great in the Target app? How do we partner with Walmart to be the first vendor to try something different within curbside? How do we dive into Amazon and do new things within Thursday Night Football, even when we look at kind of the larger national media play? And how do we actually track and see new experiences that go all the way through? And we want to be that partner, and we hope to support those efforts in every way we can. And so I think that's the best thing we can do as a brand of our size, or as a brands of our size, to really dive into Omni in a better way.
There's nothing quite like just talking to the customer, huh? I just
100%.
you get the insight. You're like, what's the answer to that? And you spend all this time, and then you have the conversation. Oh yeah, that's cool. That's something we could do together.
Well, I sure hope all listeners are watching Thursday Night Football, because I think you'll be hungry for some tacos afterwards.
I love it. I love it. We'll be on the lookout. Well, this has been great. So you've seen a lot these last few years here. We spent some time on AI. If you were to fast forward 5 years, and I know it's always hard to predict the future, but you're looking back 5 years from now and you go, this is some of the amazing changes or things that happen, at least for e-com and digital and so on. What would be on your short list?
So 5 years from now, maybe a few more wrinkles. My kids are a little older, and I look back at my work and see what amazing thing happened. I think we will look at the turn of AI like we looked at the turn of digital, and like the turn of connectivity with the internet. Like, I think this is a layer that's going to affect everything, and I know that's nothing new to the listeners of this. But I would encourage everyone not to think about it as a standalone technology, and truly, the peanut butter and chocolate that kind of is put across everything. It's going to just change the game for literally every capability that you might have in the building. I will make a kind of a vast prediction that I believe that a lot of the experiences and the tools we use every day are going to be automated and made better and quicker and faster by AI. But there's also going to be a small pendulum swing, like I said, small, back to regalness is my prediction. And I think that there's going to be a pendulum swing back to authenticity. And I think that creators are actually going to get a little bit more power by saying that they created it themselves, even if it might not be as efficient or quick.
But it's authentic. It's the real thing.
It's authentic. It's the real thing. And so, like, I think, if we want to put this in the lens of the travel industry, let's say, yes, I'm going to be able to have a machine counterpart be able to book me a trip to New Orleans, plan an awesome 3-day trip to see everything I want, and going to get me home, and it's going to be quick and fun and efficient. But there's also going to be a potential for a local New Orleans resident to be able to talk to me and tell me what they believe is best. I think we're going to get a lot of kind of standardization within the delivery of some of this type of stuff. And there'll be certain categories where there'll be a demand for kind of the personal human touch, even if it might not on its face be as, let's say, quality as some of the AI generated content would be.
But there's nothing like a home cooked meal. So that's the yeah. So it's authentic. It's the real thing.
But in 5 years, Dave, we will talk and we will see how right I was.
We'll see. We'll see, right? So all right, I've got now one tough question for you at the end here, and then I got a couple of fun ones for you as we wrap up. So the tough one is
Oh, geez. Okay.
if you could tell anything to the senior exec team at Mills or at other CPG more broadly, what would you share with them about the industry or the space?
Some of the best learnings I've had, and I've done my best to think about this as I kind of grow through my career too, are the teams who are on the front line, boots on the ground, who are hungry for work, right? And we work with our analyst teams, our planners, everyone to really kind of take on some of these new tools and tech and ask them for feedback. They're the ones who are in it. There's the one who are breathing day in and day out, and ultimately, they're usually the ones who are most up to speed on what's happening kind of outside their world and experts within their own industry. And so how do we find a way to almost do these like reverse mentoring programs a little bit more, which I always have absolutely loved, is to learn from, yeah, they might be 17 levels below you, right? Obviously not for myself, but for our senior executives. However, their viewpoint can really change. And yeah, it might not be polished or beautiful, but then, and so how do we embrace those ideas?
Could be a whole post someday. So that's one for the books. Well, great. Well, let me wrap up here with a couple of fun ones. So one is, and I know it's hard to pick just two, but if you could pick just two people who have inspired you the most in your professional life, who would that be?
Oh man, this is gonna be heartfelt. I had a fifth grade teacher, no, sixth grade teacher, I apologize, who singled me out and said, Carter, you can't read very well, you can't write very well, but you sure can talk. And I really dove into that in my professional career. And maybe I've screwed that all up in this podcast, but I have decided that, hey, talking to people versus writing an email or reading has been a edge that I've been able to take advantage of a lot in my career. And that's all thanks to a teacher at Highview Middle School who singled me out and really highlighted that for me. And that's changed my life. So, and actually, just to keep it to one, because I think that's been really impactful for me.
I love it, and I think it's something we all wish we could do better at. And I'm so happy that it seems to be a natural for you. So it's such a gift. And then hobbies outside of all the hard work you do, and your family, of course. How do you like spending your time? What do you like to do?
Well, as a dad of a 4 and 2 year old, we can all laugh and say, hobbies, what are those, right? A lot of the time that I'm not at work is really invested in my kids. One thing, though, we do really like to do together, which my coworkers are quickly starting to understand as they start to travel with me, is here in Minneapolis, we have a really interesting airport viewing area where you can pull up your car and you're about 100 feet away from the landing, probably more like 300, but landing planes. And it's loud, it's cool. And we make a tradition every Saturday that we go there with my two boys and we watch different planes, and we have become experts in the type of plane, where it's coming from, the schedule. So I always like to flex a little bit when I'm traveling with my coworkers. Of I know the seating arrangement, I know how old this plane is, I know when we're set to take off, and if you look out the left window, you're going to see a row of cars with people watching you. So that is, I think, a hobby that my boys and I have really taken on, and have found some great Saturday morning tradition with.
So not only quality time together, but educational time. What? It's amazing.
Education as well. Yes, yes, a lot of fun.
Carter, it's been an absolute delight. If folks want to get in touch with you or find you online, what's the best way to find you?
LinkedIn for sure, always the best. So just my full name, General Mills, and it should pop right to the top. Would love to hear from everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for doing this.
Dave, yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a lot of fun to tell my story, and I really appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard, please visit our website at itsrapid.ai, where you can find out more about how we're helping leading brands like PepsiCo save thousands of hours a year when it comes to retail media and digital shelf content creation. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more great episodes of Beyond the Shelf. See you next time.